Deep beneath the sands of an ancient necropolis, a team of archaeologists lifted the lid of a sealed 3,500-year-old coffin. They expected bones, linen, and dust. What they didn't expect was movement. Something inside was still alive, thriving in total darkness for thousands of years. The discovery left even the most seasoned experts stunned and raised questions no one saw coming. Around 1500 BCE, in the arid valley, now known as Upper Egypt, an empire flourished that would leave behind some of the most iconic tombs the world has ever seen. This was the height of the 18th Dynasty, an age of powerful pharaohs, skilled artisans, and elaborate rituals for the dead. Burial was not just tradition. It was a carefully choreographed passage into the afterlife. The body, prepared through a meticulous process of mummification, was placed in nested coffins and surrounded by symbolic items, amulets for protection, food for sustenance, and texts to guide the soul beyond. These sacred objects weren't meant to be seen again. Once sealed, the tomb became a capsule, untouched by time. At least, that was the plan. Many of these burials were concentrated in desert cliffs and valleys that would become synonymous with ancient Egyptian grandeur. Deir el-Bahari, the Valley of the Kings, and other hidden necropolises carved into rock. Over the centuries, some were plundered or destroyed. Others simply vanished beneath sand and silence. Occasionally, though, a burial survives, unopened, undisturbed, and intact. And when that happens, it's not just an archaeological opportunity. It's a moment of fragile connection with people who lived and died over 3 millennia ago. One such coffin was found in exactly this state, sealed tight, still resting where it was placed by hands long since gone. But when this one was opened, what greeted the team wasn't just a glimpse into the past. It was something no one expected to find in a tomb. In the spring of 2023, a multinational team led by Egyptian and European researchers began excavating an undisturbed burial shaft in the cliffs just beyond Luxor, an area known for hiding forgotten chapters of the 18th Dynasty. The site, located near a lesser-explored section of the dry Abu el-Naga necropolis, had yielded surface clues for years. Fragments of pottery, faded wall markings, and the occasional eroded artifact half swallowed by the sand. But until now, no full-scale dig had been attempted. The team, comprised of archaeologists, conservators, forensic biologists, and local experts, carried experience from previous royal tombs, yet this site felt different, remote, untouched, and unusually silent. After weeks of slow progress, working through compacted layers of sediment, the shaft began to take shape, narrow, steep-sided, and lined with decaying stonework. Every brushstroke, every grain of sand removed felt like pulling at a thread leading back into history. The torchlight revealed small details first, carved symbols, faint pigment to the edge of a seal. Then came the chamber. Resting in the center was a single anthropoid coffin carved from sycamore wood and darkened by time. There were no signs of previous disturbance. The seal over the lid was still pressed firm. No air had passed through in thousands of years. Finds like this are rare. Most tombs, even in the best protected regions, had been looted centuries ago. But this one had waited. What lay inside remained a mystery. But the state of preservation alone suggested something unusual, something undisturbed. The decision was made. The lid would be opened under controlled conditions, on site, with biohazard protocols in place. What they found inside would silence the room. On the 5th day of excavation, the team carefully lifted the lid. The surrounding chamber fell silent. No one spoke as the final layer of dust was brushed from the seam. The tools were laid aside, gloves tightened, breath held. As the wooden lid rose, slowly, inch by inch, the scent of time itself escaped. Dry linen, faint resin, and something harder to place. The interior was dark, packed with fragments of burial wrappings and remnants of faded amulets meant to guide the soul to the afterlife. And then, something moved. It was small, barely noticeable at first. A shift, a flutter. One of the researchers leaned in, assuming it was settling debris. But then it moved again, deliberate this time. Not the result of air pressure, not dust, not collapse. A cluster of organic material along the inner edge of the coffin, something that looked like decay, quivered, almost as if reacting to the light. The team froze. What should have been a still desiccated interior suddenly felt active. One of the on-site biologists raised an infrared scanner. Another retrieved a containment tent and portable isolation case. These were standard precautions, of course, protocols put in place years ago for exactly this kind of unknown. But few on the team had ever actually needed to use them. Within minutes, the chamber became a controlled zone. Masks went on, lights dimmed, sampling tools were sterilized. The movement appeared to originate from within a compact mass of material in the lower half of the coffin, interwoven among deteriorated linen and hardened resin nodules. What they were seeing was not decomposition in motion. It was something alive. The moment blurred into controlled urgency. Samples were taken. The coffin was resealed. And what had begun as a routine opening had now become a containment event, one that would raise as many questions as it answered. After containment protocols were enacted, a microbiological team conducted immediate on-site analysis. Within hours, the living material was isolated, sampled, and placed in a sealed transport case for rapid study under laboratory conditions. What they found was not a snake or a scorpion or any visible creature. It was older and stranger. Under magnification, researchers observed dense networks of hyphae, microscopic fungal filaments that were very much alive. The sample was confirmed to be a dormant but reactive extremophile fungal colony, likely of the genus Aspergillus, though its precise classification was uncertain. Incredibly, the organism had survived over 3 millennia sealed inside the coffin, without light, moisture, or fresh air. This wasn't without precedent. In 2004, scientists successfully revived bacterial spores from a 250 million-year-old salt crystal. In another case, Siberian nematodes, frozen in permafrost for over 40,000 years, were reanimated in lab conditions. Tomb environments, especially in arid zones like Egypt, can preserve biological material far beyond expected limits. Ancient spores, fungal colonies, even dormant insects have been discovered in sealed sarcophagi and wall niches. But finding one this active, reactive to temperature and light after thousands of years, was rare. The risks were immediate. Some strains of Aspergillus flavus and fumigatus, commonly found in tombs, can release toxic spores, harmful when inhaled, particularly in closed spaces. Fortunately, no symptoms were reported among the team. Masks and containment gear likely prevented exposure. Still, samples were flagged as biohazard level 2 and transferred to a high containment lab in Cairo for further analysis. The question scientists were now asking wasn't just how it survived, but whether this fungal strain had changed in ways modern medicine hadn't yet seen. In the days that followed, the biological specimen was sent to a secure facility for full genome sequencing and controlled cultivation. The goal was clear: determine what this organism was and what it had become. Preliminary results suggested that the fungal strain, while sharing markers with known Aspergillus species, exhibited unique mutations. Some sequences had no known parallels in global genomic databases. It wasn't entirely new, but it wasn't fully familiar either. Scientists began asking whether the sealed conditions of the coffin had driven a slow, isolated evolution. Had this organism adapted over time, developing traits to endure low oxygen, zero light, and toxin-rich microenvironments? If so, it could offer insights into fungal resilience, spore dormancy, and biochemical adaptations previously undocumented. These characteristics might have implications for fields like antifungal research, bioremediation, or even deep space microbial survival studies. The discovery also reframed how we understand sealed tombs. For decades, researchers focused on preservation of art, bones, or written scrolls. But now, attention was turning to ancient microbial ecosystems that might be just as revealing. Living organisms trapped in isolation for thousands of years, evolving independently of surface life. It wasn't the first time life had been found in impossible places. In Siberia, permafrost thawed to reveal viable roundworms from over 46,000 years ago. Other extremophiles have been recovered from glacial cores, amber, and deep ocean vents. But finding one inside a human coffin, next to a mummy, was something else entirely, a living thread between the ancient dead and the modern world. But this wasn't just a scientific anomaly. For many on the team, the discovery carried deeper meaning, one that extended beyond biology. Ancient Egyptians believed that the tomb was not simply a place of rest, but a threshold, a carefully prepared space meant to preserve the body so the soul, or Kai, could journey to the afterlife. Everything inside the coffin, amulets, inscriptions, even the orientation of the body, was designed to stop decay, to halt the passage of time. And yet, inside a coffin built to guard death, something was still alive. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. What survived wasn't the mummy, but an invisible organism, something no priest, embalmer, or architect ever accounted for. Life had persisted in the very heart of a space meant to defeat it. It also reopened a long-standing ethical question. Should we be unsealing tombs at all? For scientific understanding, yes. But for the sake of respect, tradition, or caution, some argue no. The idea of tomb curses may be folklore, but the unease they represent isn't always irrational. Over the last century, several high-profile excavations have resulted in mysterious illnesses, some later linked to airborne fungi or toxic gases sealed within. This wasn't framed as a curse by the team, but it was a reminder that these spaces are not empty. They are environments, ecosystems, Some quiet, some still active, and sometimes when we open the past, it moves. Later interviews with team members revealed a mix of awe and unease, emotions that lingered long after the sample had been sealed and the site cleared. The lead archaeologist described the moment simply, "It was quiet. No one said anything. We'd seen tombs before, bones before, but this was different." Another team member, a field microbiologist, admitted she didn't sleep that night. Not out of fear, but because the discovery left her unsettled. You train for everything. You expect decay, maybe contamination, but not life, not something moving after 3,500 years in total darkness. Some on the team found themselves rethinking their work altogether, not the science, but the way they approach ancient spaces. One said, "It felt like the past wasn't done with us yet, like we interrupted something." These weren't statements made for effect. They weren't exaggerated. They came from professionals who had spent years in the field, who thought they had seen everything. But this moment reminded them, and us, that the ancient world still holds surprises, not just in what it left behind, but in how it responds when we finally open the door. Thousands of years ago, someone sealed that coffin, never knowing it would outlive entire civilizations. Kingdoms would rise and fall. Languages would vanish. Names would be forgotten. But the box remained, untouched, unbroken, waiting. It was meant to preserve death. And yet, it guarded something alive. In a strange way, the discovery became more than a scientific footnote. It became a symbol of time's reach, of nature's resilience, and of how the past doesn't always stay silent. We open these coffins, searching for answers about those who came before us. But sometimes we find traces of life that stretch forward, challenging what we think is lost and what we think survives. Maybe that's the real legacy here, not just a fungus or a coffin or a mystery solved, but a reminder that the boundaries we draw between life and death, between then and now, are thinner than we think. And it leaves one question lingering, unanswered. How many more sealed coffins still wait in darkness, holding not death, but life? If you found this story as fascinating and as quietly unsettling as we did, consider subscribing. We bring you closer to the forgotten, the buried, and the nearly lost. Because sometimes the past doesn't rest quietly, and sometimes it waits.